The shrill blast of the referee's whistle pierced through the crisp autumn air as William Morgan watched his 8-year-old son, Ethan, scramble after the soccer ball with determined little legs. Will clutched his coffee cup tighter, the warmth barely penetrating the chill that had settled into his bones from working double shifts the previous night. But he wouldn't miss Ethan's game for anything, not when those excited brown eyes had begged him to watch every minute, Dad. "Move up the field, Ethan. That's it," Will called out, his voice joining the chorus of other parents along the sidelines of the community soccer field. His son glanced over briefly, a flash of a smile before returning his focus to the game. "They're doing great for their first real match," came a warm, feminine voice beside him. Will turned to find a woman he hadn't noticed before standing next to him. She wore simple black athletic pants and a blue windbreaker with the team logo, the West Side Tigers, emblazoned on the breast pocket. Her dark brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes followed the children's movements with analytical precision. "Thanks. Ethan's been practicing in our backyard for weeks. I'm Will, by the way, Will Morgan." He extended his hand, balancing his coffee in the other. "Danielle Jensen. I'm helping Coach Mike this season," she replied, giving his hand a firm shake. "Your son has good instincts. He anticipates the ball movement well." Will couldn't help the flush of paternal pride. He loves this game, sleeps with his soccer ball some nights. Danielle laughed, the sound genuine and unrestrained. That's the kind of passion that makes great players. Will found himself studying her profile as she returned her attention to the field. There was something quietly confident about her, an ease in her posture that suggested she was completely comfortable in her own skin. Not like him, perpetually exhausted, perpetually worried, perpetually trying to stay one step ahead of the bills that kept piling up since Jenny had left 2 years ago. "Dad, did you see?" Ethan's voice cut through his thoughts as the kids took a water break. His son came bounding over, sweat dampening his hair despite the cool temperature. "I sure did, buddy. Great hustle out there." Will ruffled Ethan's hair, careful not to spill his coffee. "This is Miss Jensen. She's helping Coach Mike." Ethan's eyes widened as he looked up at Danielle. "Are you the one who showed us that cool turn move last week? Coach said you played soccer for real." Danielle crouched down to Ethan's level, her smile warm. "That was me. And yes, I played for real for quite a while, still do sometimes." "She thinks you've got good instincts, kiddo," Will added. "Really?" Ethan beamed. "Really," Danielle confirmed. "But remember what we practiced about keeping your head up while dribbling?" Ethan nodded seriously. "I'm trying, it's hard to do both." "It gets easier with practice," she assured him. "Speaking of which, looks like Coach is calling everyone back." Will watched his son dash back onto the field, then turned to Danielle. "Thanks for that. He's been nervous about being good enough." "Kids that age just need encouragement and the space to fall in love with the game," Danielle replied. "The skills come with time." The second half of the game flew by, with the West Side Tigers ultimately losing 3-2 to the Riverdale Rockets. Will cheered just as enthusiastically at the end, though, proud of how Ethan had played his heart out. As the kids gathered around Coach Mike for their post-game talk, Will found himself gravitating back toward Danielle. "They did well for their first real match," he said, echoing her earlier comment. "They really did. Your son has a great attitude, didn't get frustrated even when things weren't going their way." She glanced at him with a smile. That often says something about the parents. Will felt warmth spread across his face that had nothing to do with his coffee. "I try. It's just the two of us, so." He trailed off, not wanting to dump his single dad struggles on someone he'd just met. "That can't be easy," Danielle said simply, without the pitying tone he'd grown to hate. "We manage. Speaking of which," Will checked his watch and grimaced. "I've got to get him to his grandmother's before my shift starts at 2. Danielle nodded. "It was nice meeting you, Will. You too." He hesitated, then added, "See you at practice Wednesday." "I'll be there," she confirmed with a smile that stayed with Will long after he'd dropped Ethan at his mother-in-law's and headed to his second job at the hardware store. Wednesday's practice came quickly. Will had managed to swap shifts with a coworker at the warehouse so he could watch Ethan practice before heading to his evening job at the hardware store. He sat on the aluminum bleachers, his thermos of coffee beside him, as he watched Coach Mike and Danielle run the kids through drills. There was something captivating about the way Danielle worked with the children. She was patient but firm, demonstrating techniques with an easy grace that made even complex moves look simple. Occasionally, she would catch his eye and offer a small smile that somehow made the chilly metal bleachers feel a little warmer. "Your coffee looks lonely," Danielle said, climbing up to join him during a water break. "Mind if I join it? Please," Will gestured to the space beside him. "Fair warning, though, I'm not great company after back-to-back shifts." "Rough week?" she asked, settling beside him. Will shrugged. "Just the usual juggling act, the warehouse in the mornings, hardware store evenings, and trying to be a decent dad in between." "Sounds exhausting," Danielle said. "But for what it's worth, from what I've seen, you're doing the decent dad part pretty well." "Thanks. Some days I'm not so sure." Will watched as Ethan chatted animatedly with a teammate, relief washing over him at the sight of his son smiling. "He's had a rough couple of years since his mom left. Soccer's been good for him, gives him something positive to focus on." Danielle nodded. "Sports can be healing that way. Structure, community, a sense of accomplishment." "Exactly." Will turn to look at her more directly. "So, Ethan mentioned you played for real, professional?" "Semi-professional," she clarified. "College scholarship, then played in the women's league for a few years until an injury sidelined me." She flexed her right knee subtly. "I coach now, consult for youth development programs." "Hence helping Coach Mike with our ragtag bunch," Danielle laughed. "They're hardly ragtag. But yes, I'm helping develop some new training programs for community leagues." "Your son's age group is particularly interesting, right at that sweet spot where they can really start developing technical skills." Coach Mike's whistle blew, signaling the end of the break, and Danielle stood. "Duty calls." But she hesitated briefly. "Maybe we could grab coffee sometime." "Talk more about Ethan's progress?" Will blinked in surprise. "I'd like that," he found himself saying before his brain could catch up with his mouth. "Great. Saturday morning, after the game." "It's a date," Will said, then immediately backpedaled. "I mean, not a date, just a—" Danielle's lips curved into an amused smile. "I know what you meant, Will. See you then." As she jogged back to the field, Will wondered what exactly he had just agreed to. A coffee meetup to discuss his son's soccer skills shouldn't make his heart race like this. Yet here he was, feeling like a teenager with his first crush. Saturday's game went surprisingly well. The Tigers managed a 2-2 tie against a team that had dominated the league last season. Ethan even scored one of the goals, sending Will into a cheering frenzy that made his son simultaneously beam with pride and cringe with embarrassment. "Dad, you were so loud," Ethan complained good-naturedly as they walked toward the parking lot after the game. "That's my job as your father, to embarrass you just enough," Will replied, draping an arm around his son's shoulders. "Hey, Miss Jensen and I are going to grab coffee to talk about your team. Want to come?" Ethan scrunched his nose. "Can I go to Jake's instead?" His mom already asked if I wanted to come over after the game. They've got that new space game. Will hesitated. "Did she invite you, or did you engineer this?" "She invited me," Ethan said with all the solemnity an 8-year-old could muster. "I promise." A quick conversation with Jake's mother confirmed the invitation, and Will found himself standing alone in the parking lot when Danielle approached, now changed from her coaching gear into jeans and a simple blue sweater. "Change of plans?" she asked, nodding toward Ethan's retreating figure in Jake's mother's minivan. "Apparently the allure of video games outweighs hanging out with his old man," Will said with a self-deprecating smile. "We can rain check if you'd rather." "Actually, this might be better," Danielle admitted. "We can talk more freely about his progress without worrying about pressuring him. There's a good place just down the street, the Daily Grind." The coffee shop was cozy without being cramped, with mismatched armchairs and the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. Will insisted on paying, only to have his card declined a moment of mortification that had him fumbling for cash while a line formed behind them. "Let me," Danielle said quietly, sliding her card across the counter before Will could protest. "I'm so sorry," he murmured as they moved to wait for their order. "I thought I had enough in that account." "Will, it's coffee, not a car payment," she said lightly. "You can get it next time. Next time." The words hung between them with unexpected weight as they found seats in a quiet corner, their knees almost touching in the intimate space. "So," Will began, desperate to move past his embarrassment, "tell me about Ethan's progress. Honestly." Danielle wrapped her hands around her mug, her expression thoughtful. "He's got real potential, Will. Good coordination, learns quickly, and most importantly, he genuinely loves the game." "But," Will prompted, hearing the unspoken reservation, "but he holds back sometimes, gets in his own head." "I've noticed it happens most when he's looking to you on the sidelines." Will felt his stomach sink. "He's worried about disappointing me." "Maybe," Danielle agreed gently. "Or maybe he's just very aware of how much you sacrifice to get him to games and practices." "Kids pick up on more than we give them credit for." Will stared into his coffee. "I've tried to shield him from the money stuff, but..." He sighed. "His mom leaving hit us both hard. Different ways, I guess. I threw myself into work, making sure we stayed afloat. Maybe I overcorrected." "Hey," Danielle reached across the table to touch his hand briefly. "From what I can see, you're doing an amazing job. Ethan's a great kid, confident, kind, respectful. That doesn't happen by accident." Their conversation drifted from Ethan's soccer prospects to their own lives. Will learned that Danielle had moved to town 6 months ago, that she had a degree in sports psychology, along with her athletic background, and that she had a weakness for terrible sci-fi movies. He found himself sharing stories about Ethan as a toddler, about his hopes to eventually move from hourly work to a management position, about the small house he was slowly fixing up room by room. "I should probably let you get back to your Saturday," Danielle said finally, glancing at her watch. "I've monopolized enough of your free time." "This was the best part of my Saturday," Will admitted. "Thanks for the coffee and the conversation." As they walked to their cars, Will gathered his courage. "Would you maybe want to do this again sometime, without the pretense of discussing soccer?" Danielle's smile lit up her face. "I'd like that very much." Over the next few weeks, their coffee dates became a regular fixture around Ethan's soccer schedule. Will learned that Danielle consulted for several youth sports organizations across the state, that she had a small but tasteful apartment downtown, and that, despite her obvious financial comfort, she lived relatively simply. What he didn't know was the true extent of that financial comfort, or why a woman like her educated, accomplished, clearly well off, seemed genuinely interested in spending time with an overworked single dad who sometimes couldn't even afford to buy her coffee. For her part, Danielle found herself increasingly drawn to Will's unassuming strength, his devotion to Ethan, and the way he approached life's challenges without complaint. Their conversations flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and occasional moments when their hands would brush, sending a current of awareness between them that neither was quite ready to acknowledge. It was at Ethan's championship game, nearly 2 months after they'd first met, that everything changed. The Tigers were facing their toughest opponents yet, and tensions were high. Will had managed to get the entire day off, a minor miracle given his work schedule, and he stood nervously at the sidelines as the game progressed. Ethan was playing his heart out, his face a mask of concentration as he weaved through opponents. When he scored the tying goal in the second half, Will let out a whoop of joy that had several parents turning to smile at his enthusiasm. As the final minutes of the game ticked down, Ethan made a brilliant pass to his teammate Jake, who scored the winning goal just seconds before the whistle blew. The sidelines erupted in cheers, parents rushing onto the field as the kids jumped and hollered in victory. Will caught Ethan in a bear hug, lifting him off his feet. "You were amazing, buddy. That pass was perfection. Did you see us, Dad? Did you see?" Ethan was practically vibrating with excitement. Every second, Will assured him, his throat tight with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." Over Ethan's shoulder, Will caught sight of Danielle watching them, her expression soft and warm. When she met his gaze, something shifted between them, a recognition, perhaps, of feelings that had been growing steadily beneath the surface of their friendship. The team's celebration continued with pizza at a local restaurant, paid for by the league's sponsors. Will sat with Ethan and some of the other parents while Danielle circulated among the kids, offering congratulations and analysis of their play. It wasn't until the party was winding down that she finally made her way to their table. "Quite a game, Coach Jensen," Will said, moving over to make room for her. "All credit to the players," she replied, smiling at Ethan, who was engaged in an animated replay of the game's highlights with his teammates. "They really came together as a team today." "Thanks to you and Coach Mike," Will said. "The difference in their playing from the first game to now is incredible." Danielle shrugged modestly. "Kids are like sponges at this age. They absorb everything so quickly." She hesitated, then added, "I actually have something I wanted to discuss with you, about Ethan." Will felt a flutter of concern. "Is everything okay?" "More than okay," she assured him. "There's a development camp this summer, 2 weeks of intensive training with some really excellent coaches. I think Ethan would be perfect for it." "Sounds fantastic," Will said, already mentally calculating what extra shifts he could pick up to afford something like that. "Where is it? How much does it cost?" Danielle bit her lip. "It's in Colorado and it's competitive. Only 20 kids from around the country." She took a deep breath. "Will, I'd like to sponsor Ethan, cover the costs." Will stared at her. "That's incredibly generous, but I can't accept that. It must be thousands of dollars." "It is," she acknowledged. "But I have a foundation that sponsors promising young athletes who might not otherwise have the opportunity." "Ethan fits the criteria perfectly." Will frowned, something not quite adding up. "A foundation? I thought you consulted for youth programs." A flash of discomfort crossed Danielle's face. "I do. The foundation is something separate, something personal." Before Will could press further, Ethan bounded over, his face flushed with excitement. "Dad, Coach Mike says we get trophies next week at the team party." The conversation shifted, but the questions lingered in Will's mind. Later that evening, after Ethan had finally crashed from his sugar and victory high, Will found himself online, searching for information about Danielle Jensen and youth sports foundations. What he found left him stunned. Danielle wasn't just a former semi-pro player or a casual consultant. She was Danielle Jensen, daughter of tech mogul Robert Jensen, former Olympic alternate and founder of the Jensen Athletic Foundation, which had poured millions into developing youth sports programs across the country. The woman he'd been having coffee with for weeks, the woman he was falling for, was heir to one of the largest tech fortunes on the West Coast. Will sat back in his chair, trying to reconcile the down-to-earth woman who helped coach his son's community soccer team with the polished philanthropist in the news articles. Why hadn't she told him? And more importantly, what did she see in someone like him? His phone buzzed with a text message. "Kids were amazing today. You must be so proud. Coffee tomorrow?" Will stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the reply button. Finally, he typed, "Need to talk. Not coffee, the park by the soccer field. 10 a.m. The reply came almost immediately. "Of course. Everything okay? Just need to talk," he sent back, then set his phone aside, his mind racing with questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. The next morning was unseasonably warm for late fall, with golden sunlight filtering through the remaining leaves on the park trees. Will arrived early, pacing nervously along the walking path until he spotted Danielle approaching, her expression concerned. "Will, what's going on?" she asked as she reached him. He took a deep breath. "Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" she blinked, momentarily thrown. What do you mean, Danielle Jensen, daughter of Robert Jensen, Olympic alternate, millionaire philanthropist? He listed the facts flatly. That Danielle Jensen. Understanding dawned on her face, followed by a flash of something that looked like hurt. I see you've been Googling me. Shouldn't I have needed to Google basic facts about someone I've been spending time with for months? Will countered, struggling to keep his voice level. Were you ever going to tell me? Danielle sighed, gesturing toward a nearby bench. Can we sit, please? They sat in silence for a moment before she spoke again. I wasn't deliberately hiding anything from you, Will, but yes, I probably should have been more upfront. Why weren't you? The question came out more vulnerable than he'd intended. Danielle turned toward him, her eyes earnest. Because for once, someone was getting to know me, just me. Not my father's daughter, not the foundation director, not the ex-athlete with the trust fund. Just Danielle, who loves soccer and coffee and terrible sci-fi movies. And what am I to you in all this? Some kind of charity case, the struggling single dad you can help out. The words tasted bitter on his tongue. Is that really what you think? Danielle's voice was quiet, hurt. After all our conversations, all our time together, you think I see you as a project. Will ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I don't know what to think. You offer to sponsor Ethan for some expensive camp. You always insist on paying for coffee. You never mentioned that you could probably buy the entire coffee shop if you wanted to. I pay for coffee because I can afford to, Danielle said simply. And I offered the sponsorship because Ethan genuinely deserves it, not because I'm trying to buy your affection. She paused, her voice softening. Will, I like you. A lot. I like your integrity, your work ethic, your devotion to Ethan. I like how you never complain about working 2 jobs, how your face lights up when you talk about your son, how you laugh at my terrible jokes. Will felt his anger deflating, replaced by uncertainty. But we're from completely different worlds, Danielle. How could this possibly work? Different circumstances, maybe, she conceded. But I don't think we're from different worlds, not where it matters. She reached for his hand tentatively. I should have been more transparent, and I'm sorry for that, but nothing I've shown you about myself was false, just incomplete. Will looked down at their joined hands. I don't want Ethan or me to be your good deed for the season. You're not, she assured him firmly. The camp offer stands because Ethan has genuine talent. My feelings for you have nothing to do with that. They're separate and real. Feelings. Will echoed, his heart skipping. A faint blush colored Danielle's cheeks. Yes, feelings. The kind that make me look forward to coffee dates all week. The kind that make me volunteer for extra practices just to see you on the sidelines. Despite himself, Will felt a smile tugging at his lips. I might have some of those feelings too. Even now that you know I'm a Jensen, she asked, only half joking. I'm still processing that part, he admitted. But I think I liked you better when I thought you were just a soccer coach who was way out of my league. Now you're definitely out of my league. Danielle laughed, the tension between them finally breaking. I've never cared much for leagues. She squeezed his hand. Can we start over? With full disclosure this time, Will considered this, then shook his head. No, I like where we started just fine. I just want to continue with honesty. I can do that, she promised. Their conversation continued as they walked through the park. Danielle filling in the gaps about her life, how she'd rebelled against her father's expectations by pursuing sports instead of tech. How her injury had led her to create the foundation. How she'd moved to their town seeking a quieter life away from the spotlight of her family name. So coaching 8-year-olds is your idea of a quiet life? Will teased as they completed their loop around the park. It's actually the most fulfilling work I do, she admitted. Seeing kids fall in love with the game, watching them improve week by week, it's pure joy. Will nodded, understanding completely. That's how I feel watching Ethan grow. Even on my most exhausted days, seeing him learn something new makes everything worth it. As they reached Will's car, Danielle turned to face him. For what it's worth, I've never brought anyone from the foundation to evaluate a player without telling their parents before. Ethan really is that good. Thank you for saying that, Will said. I'll think about the camp offer. Properly this time, Danielle nodded. No pressure and Will. For our next coffee date, you can buy if it matters to you. But know that I'd be just as happy if you saved that money for something important for you and Ethan. Will studied her face, seeing only sincerity in her expression. How about this, you buy the coffee, I'll cook you dinner sometime. Ethan makes a mean assistant chef. Danielle's smile was radiant. I'd love that. As winter settled over the town, the soccer season gave way to indoor practices, and Will and Danielle's relationship deepened. Their coffee dates expanded to include dinners at Will's modest home, where Ethan enthusiastically helped prepare meals that Danielle insisted were better than any restaurants. They went to movies together, took Ethan sledding when the first snow fell. And gradually, the difference in their financial situations became less of a barrier and more of an occasional, navigable hurdle. Will still insisted on contributing in ways that mattered to him, cooking meals, fixing things around Danielle's apartment, planning thoughtful dates that didn't cost much but meant everything. And Danielle learned to accept his pride while still finding ways to enrich both Will and Ethan's lives without making either feel like charity cases. When spring arrived, bringing with it a new soccer season, Ethan took the field with newfound confidence, the result of weekly private coaching sessions with Danielle that she had framed as just for fun, but that had dramatically improved his skills. Will watched from the sidelines, no longer just a tired single dad but a man finding balance between work, parenting, and a relationship that continued to surprise and delight him. He's going to be ready for that camp, Danielle said quietly, joining Will as Ethan executed a perfect give and go with a teammate. Will nodded, having finally accepted the sponsorship after long discussions with both Danielle and Ethan. He's so excited, hasn't stopped talking about it for weeks. And what about you? She asked, bumping her shoulder against his. Still worried about sending him away for 2 weeks? Terrified, Will admitted with a laugh. But I know it's the right thing. He deserves the opportunity. Danielle hesitated, then said, You know, there's a coaching component to the camp. They need volunteers to assist the pros. It's not paid, but room and board are covered. Will turned to her, surprised. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? That you come to Colorado too? Yes. She looked uncharacteristically nervous. I'll be there overseeing the foundation's involvement. I thought maybe you could request the time off, make it a working vacation of sorts. 2 weeks is a lot to ask from either job, Will said slowly. But for Ethan to have both of us there supporting him. He smiled. I'll make it work, somehow. The relief on Danielle's face was palpable. Really? You're not just saying that, really, Will confirmed, reaching for her hand. Besides, I've never been to Colorado. Might be nice to see those mountains I've heard so much about. They're pretty spectacular, Danielle agreed, squeezing his hand. Almost as spectacular as watching you and Ethan together. As the referee's whistle signaled the start of the game, Will reflected on how much had changed since that first match last fall. He'd gone from barely staying afloat to finding a partner who understood his priorities and respected his boundaries. Ethan had blossomed under Danielle's gentle coaching and genuine interest in his development. And somewhere along the way, they'd begun to feel like a family different from what Will had imagined for himself, better in many ways than he could have hoped for. You're thinking deep thoughts, Danielle observed during a lull in the action. Will turned to her with a smile. Just thinking about how sometimes the best things happen when you're not looking for them, like meeting a soccer coach who turns out to be so much more. A soccer coach who's pretty lucky herself, Danielle replied softly. To have found a man who sees beyond the surface to who she really is. As Ethan's team scored their first goal of the new season, Will and Danielle cheered together, their voices joining in a harmony that felt like home, a harmony built not on shared financial circumstances, but on shared values, mutual respect, and a love that had grown steadily from an unexpected meeting on a soccer field into something neither of them had been looking for, but both now cherished above all else.